Hey everybody. So I guess this is kind of a test. Whoever's in the chat, go ahead and message me if you can, like, throw a message in the chat if you can hear everything and see everything okay. All right, so throw up in the chat if you can hear me and see me and everything. The stream's working great. How's it going, guys? So this first project we're going to work on, we'll basically be doing marbles and dishes today. So first project we're going to start with is I'm going to do a couple nebula marbles. All right. So now nebula marbles, you're going to get a large section of your glass nice and warm, bring it over to the graphite, just kind of press it flat. Straighten it out a little bit. Grab a couple colors. I'm going to use an amber purple. And just kind of draw some color on there. And then I grab a second color. I'm going to use cobalt blue. And press that right next to that first line of color that you laid down. You want to heat up the color on the back of your piece and then smush it flat. So you got rid of the texture there. Now we're going to take a 6 mil clear and we're going to encase that color. So I'm going to get my 6 mil nice and hot, go right on the edge of the color, trace it all the way down, and then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to go back up. And I'm trying to do it relatively slow so that I gather a large chunk of clear onto the actual piece. And then once you have their color completely encased, you see the color totally covered clear. Now we're going to go ahead and twist this entire thing up. So I want to get it nice and hot. Keep my 6mm rod. Going to use that as a handle. Touch it to the end. And rotate. What I'm trying to do right now, you can kind of see I want to spiral it up. So I'm twisting up my color. And then when I'm done twisting up my color, I'm going to pull it out into a super long stringer. And that is going to be the basis for the color in our nebula marble. Now that we got the whole thing nice and hot, I want to pull it out while still twisting. I got this thick section here. Go ahead and reheat that a little bit. And you can see there we've got our full twisted color. So now, all that careful work, we're going to screw it all up, and rotate and gather the entire thing back up. So the trick here is you want to make sure that the glass stays, both the glass you're gathering onto and the glass you're gathering from, stay nice and hot, and in this case, it doesn't snap. But that way, as long as you're keeping everything nice and hot, you won't have air bubbles in your final product. So I'm trying to gather this in basically as chaotic a pattern as I can. So real thin stringers will gather up quicker, but the thick sections hold that twist a little bit better. So when I do it, I don't really concentrate too much on trying to maintain a totally even stringer. I let it get a little thick in spots and thin in spots, and it adds for a little bit more dynamic color application in the piece. Chaos is the name of the game for this one. Alright, so once you've gathered everything on there, go ahead and flame cut it off. Right now it's just a blob. So now we're going to go over to the marble mold, if I can find it. Marble mold is just a whole bunch of different spheres cut into a piece of graphite. Going to start by heating the piece up, getting it nice and hot, and then go ahead and go into the largest of the marble mold cups. And this is just to get the most basic rough shape of a marble. So now we got a rough shape. So I want to heat the whole thing up, and then we're going to move one size down in the cups that we're using. Get it nice and screaming hot. Smaller cup and rotate. Alright, that smoothed things out a lot. Every time you put your marble into the mold, you have to then hit it with the flame, because the mold will leave tiny little creases that are basically when the cold of the graphite hits the hot of the glass, creates little ripples on the surface of the glass, and you want to make sure you get rid of those. So now we pretty much have a marble shape. I'm going to go ahead and take off my 12mm rod on this and put it on something a little bit smaller. I'm going to do a cold seal, which means I heated the handle, but not the piece. So that seal, it sticks, but it's going to be a really weak seal that later on in the process should pop right off without leaving a giant scar on the glass. All right, pulled that off. Now I'll go ahead and clean it up a little bit. Now we're going to heat the bottom. Once you add your first cold seal, you're pretty much trying to heat 1/2 of the marble at a time. Right back into the mold. If you heat up your handle at all, it will better adhere to the glass. So then when you try to tap it off, you're going to get a giant hole left in your glass that you got to mess with. So by only heating half the marble at a time, we avoid solidifying what we want to be a pretty weak seal overall. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and change the axis of the piece. Heat it up, cold seal it to the side, tap that off. Now the axis has been changed. And I do that so that it'll roll better. Sometimes when you only use one axis on a marble, you can think it's perfect, and then you go to roll it, and it kind of has like a little bit of a wobble. And that's not what we're looking for, so changing the axis will prevent that from happening. All right. Now our marble's pretty much done. All that's left is to get it off the rod. So to that end, the first thing I want to do is add an even smaller rod handle to the other end, which is at a 4 mil. And I want this to be the weakest seal yet. So we heat it up, let it cool for a second, touch it. All right. Now hold it at this downward angle, because that actually helps reduce the amount of stress on your little cold seal joint that I just did. All right, just cleaning up where that last one was. Give it a second to cool. Set it in the cup, tap, tap. That'll pop right off. There's going to be a tiny little scar left over. Just kind of hit that with the flame. And then, kind of hard to see, but you've got a marble. All the products that I make here in my stream today, I'm going to post pictures of them up tomorrow on my Vulcan Facebook page. So if you want to see the end product of all of these, go ahead and check that out. Toss that in the kiln. All right, so that was the first one. That's the Nebula marble. That's the marble that I usually demo at art shows, and it's the easiest one that I know how to make. If anyone has any questions, shoot them up in the chat. I'm happy to answer. All right. So now I'm going to do a latticino mold. Latticinos are kind of those DNA spirals you see in glass, obviously an Italian term. So the first thing I need to do is basically make 2 lollipops of glass. I'm going to take a giant chunk of glass, get it as hot as I can, and then we're going to smush it flat with our smusher, and then set it aside. And then we're going to do the same thing to another piece of glass, And eventually we're going to put the two together and kind of sandwich some color between them. But by doing it this way, we guarantee that both halves of our eventual marble sandwich thingy are the same thickness. And so that will make for a better DNA spiral on the inside of your ending piece. So all I'm doing right now is just trying to gather up a nice big chunk of glass. This gather is going to essentially be half the total size of my piece. So I would like to get around a 1-inch marble. So I want to have about an inch gather. That should be about good. Something about a 1/2 inch gather. Set it on the graphite. Stamp it flat. And you have your glass lollipop. Set that one aside. Get started on the next one. This is actually probably the most time-consuming part of this marble, the boring part. Alright, almost there. So after I smoosh this one flat, I'm going to take two different colors. I'm going to put a bunch of color on there. And then we're going to smoosh it flat again. And then I'm going to sandwich that color between my two glass lollipops and then twist it. And that's going to create our nice little Latticino twist. That's pretty good. Alright, so this one's actually the bigger of the two. You always want to put the bigger of the two is the one without any color. That way, when you sandwich them, you're guaranteed that the one with color will be completely surrounded by the one without. Alright. So I'm going to take some, I think, mystery adventuring. We're going to do a nice thick line right down the center. Just like that. And we're going to take some cobalt. We want to do two lines, one on either side of that mystery adventuring we just put down. Also relatively thick lines. Just like that. You mean the rod that I initially started with? If you end up with like a cut rod, you'll get bubbles in your final piece if you don't take off the tip of it. Heat up the color, smush, get all the plane, nice and level and smooth. And now we have to try to heat both parts of this glass at the same time. And only one surface. So what I'm doing is I'm going to end up using the heat ricocheting off of this piece to keep heating this piece. And this piece was already hot, so I have to maintain its heat base more than I have to increase it. You want to get it super hot because, again, air bubbles. It's all about avoiding air bubbles. All right, once this is nice and hot, we're going to touch the two together and stamp them. And I'm going to level one of my handles and then take the other one off. Side. So now we've got our color sandwiched between two pieces of clear. Now we've got all those creases and all those air bubbles, so what I'm going to do is find spots where it's not sealed quite right. We're going to heat it up and then smush it sealed with the musher. Put it down. You kind of want to do a round motion so that the glass is encouraged to wrap around the color that we got there. Now we have a little bit of color that's outside the clear, so we're going to go ahead and pull that off. So now we're ready to do our little DNA twist. So I want to get it super hot, and then I'm going to add a 6mm handle, and then we'll slowly twist it into its final design. Yeah, smusher is a technical term. If you want to get really technical, it's a graphite musher. All right, so now that it's nice and hot, add our handle. And we want to keep heating it kind of towards the center and slowly start to twist it up a little bit. You don't want to twist it up too much, or you end up with like a really tight twist that you can't really see all that well in your final product. So you want to do a small, like maybe 2 twists in your piece. And you can see how it's twisting like that. And I'm pushing together while I'm twisting so that this will all gather up into one big ball. By rolling it on the graphite, it gets a little bit more cylindrical, and it's much easier to get something to become a ball from a cylinder than it is from a disc. All right, so now I don't want to increase the twist at all. I just want it to gather. So you kind of got that. So now I'm going to take this handle off on my left. And we're going to pull just a little bit off the end here to maintain that twist looking really good. Now we're going to gather up and hit the marble mold. It's a larger piece, so it takes a little bit longer for it to soak up enough heat for it to move. But it's best to let its heat base rise to where it needs to be rather than try to rush the process. Alright, this one's pretty large. So we're going to run it through one more time, and then we're going to switch our handle to the other side and clean up the other end. Alright, add a handle to this end. We're going to do another cold seal. And then melt off our big 12mm handle. Alright, so now we've got a whole bunch of junk at that other end. We've got bubbles, we've got all kinds of stuff that we don't want. So we're going to go ahead and tweeze all of that off and get it down to just the spiral. Alright, so now that it's come down to a nice point, we're going to go back into the marble mold, and now it's just a matter of getting it down to that perfect marble shape. Pretty good. Change the axis. Alright. So now time to go ahead and take this one off the handle. So we're going to add our 4mm again. This is about as large a marble as I would be comfortable putting a 4mm handle on. Looks like we're all set. I just gotta let that cool for a second. You can see the design. Set it in the cup. Tap, tap. Find the scar. Get rid of that. And you've got yourself a marble. So those that are actually watching for a long period of time, you're going to hear me repeat this a lot. But all of these projects that I'm doing today are going to be up. Photos of them are going to be up on my Facebook page tomorrow morning. So if you want to see what got done in a little bit better light with a little bit better camera, go ahead and check it out then. All right. I'm going to let a couple of my tools cool down, so we're going to do a dish. Normally I would be pulling a point down. I just happen to have one laying around. So I'm just going to preheat it and hope it doesn't explode. All right, so we're going to start with a little 4mm point. Add some color. So this is a technique called wrapping. I'm going to get my color nice and hot, touch it to the tip of my piece, and rotate. And then we just keep the color in the flame and keep rotating, and it just kind of drags all of the color onto the piece. See, kind of like that. Grab our second color. Do the same thing. All right, so I got two different colors on the outside there. Now we're going to take a piece of 4mm clear. And it's called raking or feathering. Basically what I'm doing is I want to get a line of that color nice and hot. Touch my 4mm and just kind of push the 4mm through the color. See, it goes like that. Do that a few more times. Okay. I think we're going to do one more time bisecting the color. Got to be careful not to let the whole piece get too hot, or it's going to start to move on you. Makes the next step just a little bit harder. Yes, lefties pretty much just reverse everything. I mean, you end up using both your hands pretty ambidextrously, because that's totally a word, when you're working anyways. So, like, I could do this with this thing in my right hand and my rod in the left hand. It wouldn't actually make much of a difference. All right. So there you can kind of see the feathering. So I want to straighten this out because I don't know if you can tell, there's a little bit of a wobble in there. The piece got a little bit too hot when I was feathering it, and it decided to move, as glasses want to do. All right. So now there's a spot right on the end there. Oops, not the screen. Difficult to see, but it's where all of the color and all of the clear points meet. That spot needs to be removed because it's going to be thick and ugly. So I'm actually just going to reach in here with a piece of glass, pull out a bunch. There we go. I just wanted to pull that all down to a nice point so it would not look all weird on the bottom in the final product. So now we're going to heat the whole thing up, blow into it. During this heating process, you want to make sure that you get rid of absolutely all the ridges, all the texture, everything, and get it down to one nice smooth piece of glass. That way it'll blow out nice and evenly, and you're not going to get thin spots and thick spots, in theory. All right, now it's nice and melted. Go ahead and blow in. And that bubble is the basis for my dish. So next you want to create a bottom. Super difficult. Heat the bottom and smush. Now I've got a flat spot. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the piece from the blow tube. So first we want to add a handle. I'm going to do a cold seal, same as I was doing on the marbles, right in the center. And I'm doing a 6mm handle. And then we want to heat this spot right where the color meets the clear. Get it super toasty. I'm going to pull and blow at the same time, and that's going to cause the glass to get really thin. So it'll be real easy to pop to open up my piece. Pop it open, and then flame cut. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a lip wrap. Lip wrap serves a few purposes. One is that it looks really pretty. A little bit more importantly, it adds a little bit of structure to the outer rim of the piece so that when I flare it in the next step, it doesn't go all crazy on me. So all I'm trying to do is lay a relatively thick, even line of color all the way around the outer rim of the piece. right, last step's kind of quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat that top half-ish of the piece. I'm going to spin my hand really fast, and centrifugal force is going to kind of throw it out from being like a jar shape to being a dish. So we got it nice and hot. Things going, and rotate. It's called flaring, and is why this is called a flare dish. Alright. Gonna go ahead and tap it off. Heat up that little bit that's left there. And you got your dish. There we go. So I've made probably about 1,000 of those in my career. All right, I'll let you guys decide. You want to see a jar next, or do you want to go back to marbles and see a different kind of marble? Probably a flour marble. Hit it in the chat. Of course, my first stream is on the first like warm day that actually happens out here. All right. Flour marble it is. I think we're going to do a rose. All right, so first thing you're going to do when you're doing the flour marble is you have to create your stringers for the petals and the leaves. Leaves are a lot fewer in number, so for when I pull the stringers for those, all I'm going to do is heat up the tip of the rod about an inch or so, grab it with the tweezers, and pull it down. Set that aside. Grab my red. Now the red there needs to be a little bit more of, so I'm going to pull my stringer a little bit differently. I'm getting a section nice and hot, and I'm going to kind of pretzel it. So you can kind of see the section like here, 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 here. You just kind of bounce back and forth, hitting two specific points. And then when you bend it, it bends at those two specific points. Got to be careful, make sure everything's hot and mushed together so you don't trap air bubbles in your stringer. And we just twist it all up. Once it's all twisted up in the color that you want it to be, or the size and consistency that you want it to be, just take it out of the flame and pull. that does is make a very long stringer. Cut it in half. Drop your tweezers. All right. That's not really long enough. Or rather, it's long enough, but I don't feel like getting my hand super sunburned, torch burned, whatever you want to call it. All right. So now with the flower marble, the initial gather is essentially going to be the full size of your piece. Whatever you gather in the beginning is basically going to be what the size of your final marble is. So you want to make sure you almost over gather. Make sure you have enough glass to be able to take some away and still end up with whatever size marble you're going for. So I'm going for about a 1-inch marble, which means that I have to gather a lot of glass, which is why I want to use that shorter rod, because as you gather 1 inch of a bead on the end of that rod, the rod is going to be super short and burny. And I don't feel like burning myself live on air today. I guarantee it'll happen at some point. All right, that's pretty good. So we got a nice sized ball there. Grab the musher. We're going to press it straight down and then musher all around the side to get a good disc. All right, so now we got to take our stringer and do a certain pattern on the backside here of the disc, and that's going to be the petals of our rose or carnation or whatever you want to call it. So basically what I'm doing is just C's, just concentric C's around the entire piece over and over. And you kind of want to cover almost the entire disc surface with the red petals. The more you do, the closer they are, the more the flower will end up looking like a flower in the end. Alright, that should be good. So you can see all it is just a bunch of lines drawn kind of around each other from the center out. Now we'll take our green and we're going to draw petals. Or not petals, we're going to draw leaves. So right on the edges, heat it up and just kind of draw squiggly lines. And then you can see squiggly lines that are going to end up being petals or leaves. Apparently I can't not mix those two up. End up being leaves in our final product. So now first you want to heat the whole thing up. I'm putting it way out in the flame like this to that red, cherry red tends to boil. So I want to kind of hold it out here to minimize that as best I can. Just kind of want to melt everything in. Still just melting stuff in. Crayon colors don't like to melt in very easily. So cherry red and yellow crayons, orange. All right. Now those are pretty much melted in. So now I'm going to start imploding the piece. What that means is that I'm taking my disc and I want the disc to curl around the edges with the center kind of still up there so it creates a cup. And then I'm going to press the cup, which ends up pushing all of the color to the center and up. And that's what's going to cause our flower to end up being a flower burst. So I'm focusing on the inside upper edge of my disc and or cup. Kind of see. Not really. But you can kind of see there's a little bit of a cup there. So what I'm going to do is I want to get this whole thing nice and hot. Then I'm going to press it on the graphite so that the back of the disc goes back to being completely flat. And what that did is now you can see how those leaves that were originally all the way on the edge of the piece went in a little bit. We keep doing that a few more times, and all the color will push to the center and out, and it'll be completely encased in clear. So this part takes a little while. There's no rush in it. You really just have to keep soaking your piece in the flame. Let that heat base build up. Let that cup form, and then press. So now I actually want the disc to shrink down and become a little bit more ball-like. So rather than focusing all of my heat on the top edge of my disc, I'm going to focus my heat a little bit more on the actual side or front-facing section of my disc. That cup is still going to form, but when it forms, rather than having to push the whole disc completely flat, what I should be able to do is only push it about halfway, and that will allow my flower to start coming in to the inside of the clear and the leaves to stick in without smushing everything and ruining the definition of the stringer color that I put in there a minute ago. Push it down again. Now you see that time, rather than being a completely flat disc, we still have a good amount of dome on there. Try doing that one more time. Should take about one more press, and that'll get the green leaves around the flower to push up. And then once everything is inside the glass, we're going to reach in there and pull the excess color out of the piece. All right, one more press. Now you can see all the color has gone and pushed straight into the middle. And it's a little bit hot, so it's difficult to see. Now what I'm going to do is I want to dig that down, create that cup one last time, and then this time, rather than pressing it on the marver, I'm going to take a piece of glass, reach in there, and pluck it out. And what that's going to do is it's going to draw all of the color that's not already adhered inside the glass down to a single point. So I can remove that from the final marble, and then we'll have our flower completely encased in clear. All right, so now we've got the cup. I can take my small flame, blast it into the center there. Reach in with my rod and pluck it out. When you do that, you want to be careful not to pull too much, or you'll actually suck part of your flower. You'll pull the center of your flower down through the bottom of the piece. right. So now I pulled it down. However, there's still a little bit of color that's sticking out from around the clear. I want to pull that off with my tweezers. And we have the flour bursting up in the clear part of the marble. So now it's on to the sphere making process. No matter what marble you're doing, no matter what the design is, no matter how crazy cool or whatever it is, this process has to get done with every single piece. Alright, so we've pretty much got the shape we're looking for. I will add the handle to the other end. Honestly, this one I learned from the Flow magazine. They had a, not this specific flower, but they had like a step-by-step tutorial demo thingy on how to make a flower marble. The other style of flower marble that I make is actually almost directly from that. I just made a couple modifications. And then after I kind of figured out the process and what it was that was going on, basically once I figured out how to make something backwards and inside out, I managed to come up with the carnation. So the carnation's a little bit more my own design, though I'm pretty sure every glass blower who's been blowing glass for longer than 3 years has figured out how to do this. But yeah, Flow magazine, awesome demos, teaches a lot of good stuff. Now we're just shaping it again. Change the axis again. I guess not again, but change the axis as I have on all other marbles. One last final shaping. And now we're ready to take it off of the handle. Add your 4 mil. Take your original handle off. Focus your heat so your handle doesn't get hit. You just want to get rid of that scar that's on the bottom. Let that cool for a second. Set it in the cup. Tap, tap. All right. And there you have the flower marble. Whew. Grab some more water right back. Okay, so what to do next? I think I'm going to do a vortex marble next. For that, we'll use a whole bunch of techniques and things that most people don't get to see, or at least not for me. So the first thing we're going to do is encase an opal. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is clean off my rod. Then we're going to encase an opal. So this is the most complicated marble I've ever done in front of people before. So all right. So first I want to heat, this is a tube. I want to heat up the bottom here to make sure it doesn't crack for any random reason. Then we're going to grab an opal out of my little case here. I can't really get this on camera, but it's not that important. Alright, so we now have our opal in the bottom of our tube. So now we want to heat the tube, starting at the bottom, very carefully. Let the opal touch. Now when you're heating up and around this opal, you have to make sure you heat from the bottom up very carefully, and you want to kind of get the glass to wrap around the opal without creating any air pockets. 90% of glass is the battle against air bubbles. So you just slowly heat up and around the opal to encase it in clear. and then I usually just do a little suck in to get the last air out. Just like that. So now we have, there's no way you can see that. There's a tiny little opal that is attached, completely encased in clear, and it seems like I even did an okay job. So now we want to add that to our rod. That's going to be the base of our marble, the basis of our marble. Attach those nice and careful. And then you're going to take the tube off. And then get rid of that little air bubble that's left over. And gather it up just a little bit, and then I'm going to put in an angle marver to get it down to the 12 mil. You just want that opal to very much be part of the rod that you're using. Alright, so that opal is going to be part of the lens of this marble. So that means that all of the actual design that you're going to see through said lens, I'm going to be doing below it. So you start by adding a little bit of glass off of a 6 mil rod below my vortex marble. Now the smaller the amount of glass you add, and the smaller your little cone is, the more vortex effect you can actually get. But you want to make sure you have enough that it looks good. So now we have that. Then we're going to cone it. Building and maintaining that cone is incredibly important. All right, I gotta grab some fruit. Hold on. All right. So now we're gonna bounce it in the flame. This has a little piece of silver in it, and I'm going to fume the bottom of this piece with silver. So you can see it's kind of got a little bit of a yellowish tint to it. That's what we're looking for. So now I'm going to add some air bubbles. I'm taking my tool, X-Acto knife, or a Sawzall blade, and just kind of press it in a couple times on one side only of the piece. So that creates little dents. Now I'm going to take my blue, and I want to cover over those dents so that it traps an air bubble in each one. So it'll look like kind of a sea cave marble in the end. And just run it down. So now we're going to heat that up and twist it. Never be afraid to recone your marble. And we'll attach our 4mm rod, focus our heat on the thickest part of the cone, and twist. All right. So now we want to recone it. Almost every single step that you do in this process, you want to turn it back into a cone afterwards. All right. So once again, you can see we got it coned. We got our color on the outside there. Now I'm going to take some frit, which is crushed glass, and a pinch of purple luster. And then we're going to do a pinch of Amazon Night. And you can't really see it, but all I've done on the graphite there is basically make a pile and then swish said pile around so that it's all nice and mixed. Get your cone nice and hot, and then we're going to rotate the cone in the frit. And you can see that picked up a bunch of frit. I'm going to do that a couple more times. All right, that should be pretty good. Now recone it. All right, so now that was actually all the work that you're going to see when you look down the vortex. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some black and cover all of that up. You want to start thin and get thicker so that you maintain your cone and start to create more of a marbled shape. So that first line that goes on there real thin. And the second rung up, a little bit thicker. A little bit slower. And then the last line is super thick. All right, so now we're going to melt this in so that all of that texture on that last layer goes away. And then we're going to add our design that you're going to end up seeing on the outside back of the marble. right, that's pretty good. Don't particularly care for any of the stringers that I've got, so we're going to do a pinwheel pattern on the back instead. So first, I want to get this bottom half to be a little bit more of a marble shape, spherical. All right, that's good. Nice sphere. So now I'm going to take a color rod. I'm going to use Mystery Adventuring, because I guess that's my color today. Let this cool for a second so it's not moving. Now I'm going to create sets of 3 dots. And then 1 dot in the center. See, we just got a bunch of dots around the sides. All right, so now we're going to heat this whole thing up. We want those dots to melt in mostly by themselves. If I have to put it in the mold before they're melted in, it's going to change their structure a little bit, which is suboptimal. Okay, had to change my music. So now we're going to take, we're going to heat that up a little bit more. Run it through the mold once. Now I'm going to take the same color that I used as the background of my piece, which is black, pull it down to a little bit more of a nice point. And now we're going to heat each of those sections of 3 and put this in the center between all 3 and twist it so all 3 get some color dragged into this nice twist. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to see, but all 3 of the colors have twisted together, or all 3 of the dots of color kind of twist together into this little pinwheel design. So we're just going to go around, and every grouping of 3, we want to hit it with the flame, get it nice and hot, and then twist it from the center. Okay, so all of our pinwheels are done. So now it's time to smush our lens in there. So I just want to clean this back up a little bit more. All right, now for the fun part. So I'm going to take a handle, 6mm clear, put it on the bottom, and then we are going to basically mush clear glass from the right into the piece so that it starts to form a lens. So the point of doing the opal as the first step in this process is by putting the opal farther up onto the rod, which is going to end up being the lens. It's going to make sure that the opal sits above all of the color design and the vortex that you're going to be seeing when you look into the piece. And it'll also make sure that it's in a good spot to get magnified by the lens as I push it on. As a rule of thumb, your colored section that you worked on, that's covered and everything, that should be no more than 50% of your total marble, and the less, the better. The more lens you have on the vortex marble, the more the actual illusion will be, more of it will show up. So things will look deeper, it'll look bigger and cooler. And that's the point of the vortex in the first place. So you can see I'm just kind of smooshing clear onto the piece. And I'm going to try to go, I'm shooting for a 2/3 clear to 1/3 color ratio. And that should make the effect real nice without having a mostly clear marble. That seems pretty good. So now we'll take our handle off. Now I want to focus all of my heat on the color and also on that joint where the color meets the clear. Now it's kind of a crease. We want that to round itself out so that when I put it into the marble mold, it doesn't fold over on itself. But instead, the color just kind of opens up real nice, and you have this cool lens on top of everything. Glass kind of wants to be a sphere. It's its natural, inclination to become spherical. So the more you heat something, the more it will just naturally form a sphere. Technically, I guess that means you could make a perfect marble without the mold, but the amount of patience and skill required to do that's absurd, so I don't think anyone ever has. But now that you see that I've heated that, you can see it doesn't have a crease anymore. It's now like a nice smooth slope. Once that happens, we can start putting it in the mold. You can see even after all that, when I put it in the mold, it kind of has that crease line. Yeah, you can kind of see it. So you want to do that once. Once that crease line becomes a little bit too prominent, get it back in the fire and heat it up again. Maybe. Yeah, I can make a video of all of the pieces that I've done today. I'll post that up tomorrow. I'll just make a new playlist that'll be like live stream demo pieces. And I'll put the date of each one So you want to see the finished pieces of the one you watched yourself? I'll just have a little slideshow thing that'll do that for you. All right, so now the whole back of that marble is nice and smooth. Now add the handle back on. Cold seal to the bottom. Melt off your 14 millimeter rod, or 12 millimeter rod. So now we're just going to heat that section where the marble kind of turns into a mountain, where I pulled that off. I think I'm just going to melt this in and get my lens to be a little bit bigger. Big lenses are better than small lenses. So I guess size matters. Again, it's the same thing as the last time I did something like that. I want to make sure that it doesn't fold over, because if it folds over, it'll create a crease that will not go away in your final product. So we just shape it down. All right, that's pretty good. So now we're going to change our axis. When I add this handle, I want to make sure I adhere to the clear. That. It's kind of cool enough to see the design. You can see that opal in there. It's a little bit difficult to see the vortex part. That'll be in the pictures in the video and on Facebook. And remember, guys, if you're local, once the world starts again, I teach classes in the studio. Usually do public classes through the rec district. Not sure what we're doing this year because of, the whole world shutting down. But I also do private classes. Got 3 torches, up to 3 people to blow glass at the same time. And you take home everything you make. It's a lot of fun. So if you like what you're seeing, looks like fun to you, want to give it a shot, go ahead and message me. All right, so now it's time to take this off the piece. So once again, we're going to add a 4 millimeter rod, which is super small. Heat up that scar that I left behind. Rotate it in the mold. Make sure everything's nice and smooth. Get rid of any cold marks. Let that cool for a second. And we're just going to set it in the cup of your marble mold. Tap, tap. There's a tiny little scar left over. Go ahead and make sure you melt that in. And that is a vortex marble. That's the one that's going to have the coolest, like, that's my coolest marble. That's like the one that gets the most sales, that I think is the best, that I enjoy making the most. So you'll get some good pictures of that posted up tomorrow. If you guys are enjoying the stream, make sure you hit that like button. Let me know. And then my next stream is also going to be on Sunday, so day after tomorrow. And that one, I'm probably going to do a little bit more pipe work. I'm going to be making some spoons and some Sherlocks and stuff. So if that interests you, you can definitely set the reminder to do that. I'll be posting up my next live stream thingy probably tonight. I want to know what this. Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to try. Actually, now I'm going to do another dish because I got to let this cool down a little bit. So any of you that haven't seen the dish, awesome. Now you get to see a dish. For those of you that have, now might be a time to go to the bathroom. All right. Start with a point. I'm going to go ahead and preheat that and then close the end. I'll rotate that down and just kind of pull off the end of the tweezers. Let's start with random color number 6. I think it's like some kind of orange. I'm pretty sure I bought this Dragon Ball Z Dragon Balls. I just haven't gotten the chance. So heat up the tip of your rod, touch it to the glass, and rotate. Keep the color glass in the flame. Just let it drag itself on. Choices. And grab random color number 2. Some kind of blue. No idea what kind of blue. Second layer I'm going to lay on a little bit thicker than the first because the blue is transparent, which means it's not going to show up quite as much. All right. I got that on there, nice and adhered. Now, I'm going to feather the entire piece. So rather than do just lines down, like I did last time, I'm going to do a line that goes down, and then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to turn around and do a line that goes up. And keep doing that all the way down the piece. Hopefully I picked a large enough 4mm rod. It's often difficult to judge. The amount of residual heat that gets thrown off by these pieces when you're doing this is a little extreme. All right. So now you can kind of see how you got that whole thing wrapped up in there. Now we're going to heat the tip there, pull that off. Now we want to gather this all up and get rid of all of the texture, all the ridges, everything, so that it's nice, one nice smooth piece of glass. Once that's all gathered up, you're going to go ahead and blow into it. Create a bottom. All right, so now it's time to take it off the blow tube. We're going to go ahead and add our handle to the center. And then you want to heat that spot where the color meets the clear. Once we get it nice and heated up, I'm going to pull and blow at the same time. That's going to cause the glass to get super thin, and it'll be nice and easy to pop. Once this pops, go ahead and flame cut. So now we're going to go ahead and add a lip wrap. This whole piece is fairly transparent, so I'm going to add a pretty dark lip wrap to kind of contrast everything. There we go. All right, so this dish is kind of huge. So now I'm going to heat this top half of the piece. Once it's all melted in, there's no texture left over. We're going to flare it open, which means I'm just going to spin my hand really fast. Centrifugal force is going to kind of throw it out from being a jar shape into more of a dish. We get it hot, get it going, and flare it. Grab on, tap it off, heat up the scar, and we are all set. All right, so I'm going to do one more piece. For those of you who have stuck with me through everything, you guys are awesome. Thank you. I am going to do a dichro vortex marble. I've actually only made one of these before, so if I'm going to screw something up, burn myself, and end up this show with a bang, this is going to be the piece. So thanks for sticking, and we'll do this one more, and then I'm going to be finishing early today. Maybe not. I don't know. This may take me a little bit longer. So give me just 1 minute. Thank you. It came out pretty good. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is create my cone. Very similar to how I did in that other vortex marble. The cone on this piece is going to be a bit bigger. But I'm not actually adding a whole lot to the piece other than the dichroic glass. So want it to be too insane. All right. Cone it up. It's a little big, so I'm actually going to put that down. So I really shouldn't do while it's hot, but whatever. There we go. All right. So one side of this, super shiny. Other side, regular glass. So I want to punty up to the corner. And then I'm going to be heating only the side that doesn't have the acrylic filament, or whatever it is. I want to do it very carefully, very far out in the flame, because this stuff will fry off your piece super easy. I'm also simultaneously heating up my cone. What I'm going to do is essentially wrap the cone in my dichro glass. Touch it to the cone. Make sure it adheres. Take off the punty. All right. I just kind of want to roll it on there. There's a little more on there than I want, so I'm actually going to lift that up and cut it off. There we go. Now I have to be really, until this dichro is pretty deeply encased in my piece, you got to be really careful. It wants to fry out and look all terrible. It's like its deepest desire to look like crap. So you're kind of fighting it doing exactly what it wants to do. All right, so that's on there pretty well. So we're going to take some glue and cover just the dichro part. It serves a few purposes. The main purpose is really protection, but aesthetically, by backing the dichro with another color, especially a darker color like cobalt blue, it sets that shine off so that it looks better than it would if it was just backed with clear, for instance. All right. So now, very similar to the last vortex marble, I'm going to go ahead and spiral this. So I want to get the whole thing pretty heated up before I even attach my handle. Attach the handle to the end, rotate. Focus your heat on the thick spot. And you don't want to rotate a ton. I just want a little bit of a spiral. If you rotate too much, I would risk messing around with the dichro, and I don't want to do that. That's pretty good. So we're going to pull that off. And then recone. Since there's almost nothing else to this piece other than the dichro and the cone, the vortex effect made by the cone, you have to be very careful to maintain that, even more so in this than the regular vortex marbles. The regular vortex marble, even if the vortex doesn't come out perfectly, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the marble itself. Whereas in this one, I don't want to draw any attention away from the actual vortex itself. All right, so now we're going to do the background. Same thing as we did last time. You want to start nice and thin. This layer is super thin. And then it gets thicker. Well, not much yet. Now it starts to get thicker. So remember, the rule of thumb was 50% clear. So I have a funny feeling this marble is going to end up being absolutely massive. So those are always fun. So I'm just trying to heat it up, get all that texture to go away. So for this one, I think I want to do my stringer pattern, which, I should have thought of ahead of time. That's okay. So I'm going to heat up a rod. Make sure this stays straight. Pull a stringer. And then we're just going to draw a line all the way across the piece with the stringer. And you want to make sure the ends meet up of each line. I'm going to do 2 lines of this color. Because it's pretty and I like it. So you can see the obvious benefits of doing this ahead of time. So each of these colors that I'm adding are what are called striking colors. What that well, not this one, but the other ones. What that means is that you kind of have to hold the kiln at around 1,000 degrees to get them to their color to show up. So these are going to look almost clear probably right now, and then will look absolutely awesome and gorgeous tomorrow after they come out of the kiln. All right, last one. All right. So you can kind of see on there we've just got various different lines of color that go down. So now we take our tungsten pick, got right there. I want to heat up in a line just like I was feathering and do almost the exact same thing, except this time without clear glass, I just kind of grab the glass with the pick and drag it down. Like that. I just go right down the piece and do this all the way around. And last one. All right. Yeah, I think it is going to end up being a 2-incher. I'm basically going to have to add glass from the rod into the lens until it's too close to the end of the rod for me to hold it. This goes with the territory of I've only made one other one of these ever, so we'll see how it goes. All right, so now that we've got our back color on, we're all set to first marble this out and then make the lens. All right, so now I'm going to take the handle, put it on the end there. And then we're going to start the horrendous process of adding a lens to this thing. One of these days, I'm going to do a 4-inch or a 3-inch marble on stream. It's going to have to be for adults only because during the lens process, I am swearing up a storm and sweating and pissed off and unhappy. They're made with pure hate. So I'll do one of those on stream at some point. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you heat up right at that joint where the color meets the clear and push that out a little bit before you start adding too much lens to the actual piece. If that little constriction point is too large, you can end up having all kinds of difficulties getting it to close at the end of the process. Getting hot. This one's going to be a little bit closer to that 50% mark rather than the last one where I ended up getting almost 60 to 70% of it being a nice clear lens. I should have used a longer rod, which is the story of my life. All right, that's pretty good. We're going to call that good. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty gnarly, big marble. All right. Now we got to heat that clear, or that color at the bottom. I want to get that to melt into the clear so it doesn't crease. Let me put it in the marble mold. And then I get to really quickly find my 2-inch marble mold. And I don't think the little guy down there is going to do it for me. So at this point, theoretically, there's enough glass protecting the dichro that's on the inside of that vortex that it shouldn't fry out. But when working with dichro, you're going to get a whole lot of words like theoretically, shouldn't, might not, things like that. I'm also not an expert with it. There's people who can do, like Milton Townsend once did this human sculpture thing, and then he took a sheet of dichro, unencased, just a sheet of dichro, big sheet, like probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches long by like 5 inches tall, big sheet. And the female, it was like a female sculpture, kind of like this. And he attached the dichro sheet to her hand that was up here and wrapped it around her and then tweezed and messed with it so that it ended up looking like this dichro like cape shawl thing that she had going on. But he did the whole thing without it being encased with just like a little hand torch. And like I would have fried every spot of that dichro had I tried to do that. But he pulled it off and it was really, really, really impressive. It was a great piece. All right, so we're almost there. Found it. All right, so now we're moving on to the 1.5 to 2-inch mold. So I think this guy is going to end up being about a 1.5-inch marble, which is still a very respectable sized marble. So I start in the 2-inch sphere, get it most of the way down, and then we're going to move to the 1.5-inch sphere once I get this little, see how it's kind of like goes, whoop. Once I get that to go, then we can put it to the 1.5-incher and finish out the actual shape. All right, move over to 1.5-inch mold. Get everything pressed in there. Alright, so that's pretty much marble, or spherical marble, on the bottom end. My brain stops working when I get too hot. I'll let that cool for just a second, and then we're going to add our handle and take it off of our 12 mil rod. Just go ahead and touch that to the center. I'm going to do a cold seal, but I actually want it to be a fairly hot cold seal. I know that sounds weird, but I want it to adhere pretty well, but still pop off easily when I need it to, because this marble is large. It's large. All right. Now we just got to get that clear to melt into the rest of the lens. Get the marble down a little bit, and then reheat so I don't hold the glass. There we go. Now it's doing what I want it to do. All right, so I told you earlier that sometimes marbles, if you only work them on one axis, will have a little bit of a wobble, even if it looks pretty much perfect. This is actually one of those marbles. I can tell this because I've been doing this forever and a day. But this marble, even if it looks pretty much perfect, if you roll it, it's going to do a little bit of this. So I have to change the axis. Some of the others would have been fine. I just do it out of habit. But this one I have to do. And of course, I don't have any rods around. Oh yeah, that dichro's nice. It didn't fry out at all. So you guys can't really see the sparkle. That'll be in the photos that I post up tomorrow. But you can see that spiral. How nice that looks. All right, remember we're back to only working half the marble at a time. Yeah, that one has a little bit of texture in there. It's one of those things you probably wouldn't see or even necessarily feel if you just held the marble. But when I rotate it in the mold, you can feel a little bump. Well, not anymore. Now it's gone. But you could feel a little bump where there's a bit of texture. And that's something, you could do that with your eyes closed after you've made enough marbles, where you just feel it and know that it's not ready. And that was part of why I had to change the axis. But by changing the axis, it reshaped that little bump, so now that it's going to be a perfect sphere. All right, so now we're going to do our final punty before we take it off. Now, I'm not going to do a 4mm punty on this thing because it's huge for a 4mm punty. So all I do is taper down a 6mm a little bit, and we attach. It was a little bit too hot when I attached, so I may have to do that again. We shall see. My rod ran away. All I'm doing is getting rid of the scar from the last handle. Let that cool for a second. Ooh, those tweezers are super hot. Tap, tap. It did not work quite as well as I would have liked. There we go. So I left a little bit more glass behind than I wanted it to, so I tapped it and I managed to get the rest of that off. So this should melt down just fine. Let that cool for a second, then we're going to put it into the kiln. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's stream. For anyone who actually stuck with me till the end for full 2.5 hours, you guys are gods. For anyone who didn't, you're still pretty awesome. So all of these pieces, I'll have pictures up on Facebook tomorrow, and then I will also post a short montage video, just a slideshow of these pieces up on YouTube. So be sure to check that out. My next stream is going to be on Sunday, same time, 4 to 7, and I'm going to be doing mostly pipe work. So there's going to be some Sherlock, some spoons, stuff like that. If that's what you're looking at, that's what you're into, you want to see that, come check me out. Beyond that, check me out on Facebook, Vulcan Glass Art Studio, YouTube, obviously you know where I am, Instagram at Vulcan Glass Art, and if you want to support the studio, check us out on Patreon at Vulcan Glass TV. You can sign up to become one of our patrons, and you'll end up getting some cool stuff that I'll make for you on stream, on air, and then send it out. And then also remember, all those products, totally for sale. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you next time.